70 is the age when you just want to celebrate your birthday quietly with your family, for everything to be peaceful and calm so nothing distracts you. But this time, I couldn't hope for such luxury. My son was running a little late. When he came into the living room with a cake box, he said, "Dad, remember how in childhood we used to put a blindfold on and guess the flavor of the cake?" I remembered our tradition and gladly agreed. They blindfolded me, and my son handed me a spoon. The first thing I felt was some kind of tasteless mush, but after a couple of spoonfuls, I realized it tasted like dog food. I ripped off the blindfold and said, "Good joke, son, but I can recognize dog food." There was open hostility on my son's face. "Remember this taste. From now on, you'll be eating canned dog food for the rest of your life, because I'm going to take everything from you," my son shouted and walked out. I didn't know it yet, but that was the moment my quiet old age ended, and his entire life fell apart. I'm Leonard Harris. Most people call me Len. 70 years old, widower, Vietnam-era mechanic, though I never left the States. For 45 years I fixed other people's engines so I could someday build my own dream garage. I was sitting in that very dream the night everything changed. My house isn't a mansion, but the garage. That's my cathedral. A 3-stall brick addition I paid for in cash, built onto a modest ranch house outside Dayton, Ohio. Inside, a 1968 Mustang Fastback Candy Apple Red, a 1955 Chevy Bel Air, two-tone turquoise and white, and my pride and joy, a perfectly restored 70 Dodge Challenger in plum crazy purple that made grown men stop talking mid-sentence. That garage was where I'd spent most of my life after my wife Carol died. The smell of grease and gasoline was the only thing that still made sense, and it's exactly what my son wanted. Mark is 42, tall, well-dressed, and always on his phone. He works in insurance, or risk management, as he calls it, which I suppose sounds fancier at corporate lunches. He drives a leased BMW he pretends to own and wears watches he doesn't quite pay off. I loved that boy from the first breath he took, but somewhere along the way, he stopped being my son and started being a man who was constantly calculating what I was worth. The dog food trick started as what I thought was one more of his tasteless jokes. "You should have seen your face," Mark's wife Stacy said, laughing from the couch as I wiped my mouth with a napkin. "Relax, Dad, it's just a can. It's not like he poisoned you." The room smelled of store-bought cake frosting and whatever perfume Stacy had bathed in. The TV murmured behind her, some reality show where people argued about renovations while my actual life was being remodeled without my permission. I stared at the metal can on the coffee table. Bright blue label. Premium beef chunks for active dogs. Max, my old golden retriever, sat in the doorway of the kitchen, head tilted, as if he was the only one who understood how wrong this was. "Very funny," I managed, keeping my voice even. "You drove all the way over here just to humiliate your father for his birthday?" Mark stood there, the cake box still in his hands, his jaw tight. "That wasn't a joke," he said. "That was a preview." "Preview of what?" I asked. He set the cake on the coffee table with more force than necessary. "Reality, Dad. You think this is normal? A 70-year-old man living alone in a 3-bedroom house with a show garage full of toys he doesn't need? They're not toys. They're my cars. I built them. I paid for them. With money you could be using to make your life easier instead of clinging to a fantasy." Mark's eyes were sharp, calculating. "You can't keep living like this. I mow my own lawn. I fix my own meals. I still change my own oil." I gestured toward the kitchen. "I'm managing just fine." "For now," he snorted. "You forgot to turn off the hose last week. The neighbor posted about it on Facebook. Whole front yard was a swamp." "I made a mistake," I said quietly. "One time." Mark stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Next time it won't be a hose. It'll be the stove, or the space heater. And then everyone will ask me why I didn't put you somewhere safe before you burned the place down. Stacy sighed loudly from the couch. Mark, can we not do this now? The bakery closes at 8, and that cake is going to melt while you two measure your egos. He turned away from me like the conversation was already decided. We've talked to a facility, Mark said casually, like he was mentioning a restaurant. Sunset Ridge. It's one of the good ones. They have activities, nurses, nice furniture. People there your age seem content. The word pricked like a needle. I'm not going to a home, I replied. I have a home. Mark's mouth curled. Not for long. That's when he said it. Those words that felt like acid on my skin. Remember this taste, he said, nodding toward the dog food. From now on, you'll be eating canned dog food for the rest of your life, because I'm going to take everything from you. Then he walked out, not even bothering to wait for my answer. Stacy hesitated a moment, eyes flitting from me to the door. He's just stressed, she said, softening her voice as if that would bandage the cut. Insurance is brutal these days. The kids are expensive, the house, everything. He's worried about you too, that's all. And the dog food? I asked. She picked up the can between two fingers, like it was something dirty. He wanted you to understand that, well, things can change quickly. I watched her go, heard the BMW start in my driveway, louder than it needed to be. Max patted over and rested his head on my knee. Don't worry, boy, I whispered, ruffling his ears. We're not going anywhere. But I was wrong. I just didn't know it yet. The first scratch appeared 3 days later. I'd been in the garage most of the morning, sorting tools, changing the oil on the Mustang, running my fingers over chrome I'd polished more often than I'd slept some weeks. Afternoon sun angled through the side window, lighting up dust motes and the plum paint of the Challenger. When I opened the side door to let Max out, the air smelled of cut grass and gasoline. It smelled like my life. I almost missed it. On the driver's side of the '55 Chevy, just above the rear wheel well, a white line sliced through the turquoise paint like a fresh scar. It wasn't big, maybe 4 inches. But I knew every curve and contour of that car the way some men know their wives' faces. That scratch might as well have been across my own cheek. My heart thudded. I ran my fingertip over the damage. Not a shopping cart bump, not road debris. It was too clean, too deliberate. It looked exactly like a key drag. I checked the garage door, closed. The keypad, light steady. The side door, lock unlatched. I always lock that door. I stared at it for a long moment, then walked the perimeter, checking windows, the fence, the gate. Nothing broken. Nothing obvious. All I had was that thin white line on turquoise and the gnawing feeling that someone wanted me to know they'd been here. That night, Mark called. "Hey, Dad," he said brightly. There was a buzz behind him, the hum of voices, a TV somewhere. "Just checking on you. You good?" I looked at the scratch through the kitchen window at the garage. "Fine," I said slowly. "Someone was in the garage." There was a pause. "What do you mean?" he asked. "Door was unlocked. One of the cars is keyed. Looks deliberate." "Maybe you forgot to lock it," he suggested. "You've been more forgetful lately." "I don't forget that door," I said. "You know I don't." "Well, somebody in the neighborhood probably noticed you're an old guy with expensive toys and decided to remind you you're not invincible." His tone sharpened. "You ever think about the liability, Dad? What if someone gets hurt on your property? Trips, falls, sues you? You'd lose everything." "I've got insurance," I replied. "Through a reputable company, as I recall." He ignored the sarcasm. "And if they decide you were negligent, then what?" He was pushing me toward something, but I didn't yet see what. "Look," he said. Sunset Ridge had an opening come up. We're touring it this weekend. You should come, just to see it." "I'm not going," I said. "Dad, you're alone. You've got memory lapses. One unlocked door isn't dementia." He exhaled, frustrated. "It's not just that. I talked to a lawyer. There are options. Conservatorships, guardianships. We can make sure your assets are protected and you're safe, even if you fight us now." "You talked to a lawyer about taking control of my life?" I asked quietly. "For your own good," he insisted, "before something serious happens." We hung up without resolving anything. I spent half the night sitting in a lawn chair in the dark corner of the garage, Max at my feet, a wrench in my hand like a club. The cars loomed around me, silent witnesses. No one came. The second scratch appeared a week later, this time on the Mustang's hood. This one wasn't subtle. It ran from the grille to the windshield, deep and jagged, like someone had put their whole weight behind the key. The third scratch took the clear coat off the Challenger's passenger door. That time I found muddy shoe prints where they shouldn't be, and a small, familiar thing pressed into the dirt near the workbench. A discarded gas station receipt with Mark's credit card numbers partially visible, and yesterday's date. That night I lay awake in my bed staring at the ceiling, the dog snoring at my side. Adrenaline hummed through my veins. My son was declaring war on my garage, and my garage was my life. The next lawyer who knocked on my door brought papers that shook the flimsy peace between us to dust. It was a Wednesday. My knees ached from crawling under the Challenger to replace a fuel line. I'd just sat down with a turkey sandwich when the doorbell rang. Max barked. I shuffled to the front door, wiped my hands on a dish towel, and opened it. The man on the porch wore a navy suit and a practiced, sympathetic expression. He held a slim leather briefcase and stood with the careful posture of someone used to scene setting. "Mr. Harris?" he asked. "That's me," I said. He handed me a card. "Thomas Garrison. I represent your son, Mark Harris." The sandwich turned to sawdust in my throat. "What does Mark need a lawyer for?" I asked. "May I come in?" he asked. "We should talk privately." Something inside me went cold and calm. "No. You can say what you need to say right here." He hesitated, then nodded as if that was completely understandable. "Very well." He opened his briefcase, extracted a manila folder, and passed me a stack of forms clipped together. "This is a petition," he said, "for the appointment of a guardian and conservator. For you." The letters swam on the page in front of my eyes. I saw words: incapacitated, vulnerable, unsafe, impaired judgment, strung together like accusations. "He's trying to declare me incompetent," I said flatly. "Legally incapacitated," the lawyer corrected. "Your son is concerned about your welfare. According to his statement, you've shown signs of significant memory lapses, poor financial management, and physical decline. It's not about taking from you, Mr. Harris. It's about protecting you. Protecting me by taking my house and my cars." Garrison adjusted his tie. "If a conservatorship is granted, the conservator, in this case your son, would be responsible for managing your assets in your best interest. That might include liquidating certain non-essential items." He glanced down at his notes. "Specifically, a collection of classic vehicles that require substantial maintenance costs and may present safety hazards." My chest tightened. "He told you to write that?" He provided the facts. I prepared the petition. Facts. Like those scratches he'd probably inflicted himself. "I'm 70, I said. "I passed my last physical. I pay my bills. I don't need a guardian." "Then you can contest the petition," Garrison said in that same soothing tone someone might use to coax a dog into a crate. "There will be a hearing. The judge will review the evidence, perhaps order an evaluation. In the meantime, my client would like to avoid unpleasantness." "Unpleasantness?" I repeated. "He fed me dog food on my birthday." The lawyer blinked, a crack in his professional mask. "That's not in the petition," he said finally. "Of course it's not," I replied. "Tell my son this, Mr. Garrison. Tell him that if he wants to talk about my life, he can come here himself, and tell him to stay out of my garage." I handed the papers back. "You should keep those," he said. "I've seen enough," I said, and closed the door. My hand shook as I walked back to the kitchen. I leaned on the counter, breathing through the tightness in my chest, willing my heart to slow. This was no longer about jokes or scratches or persuasion. My own son was trying to convince a court I was less than a man. I'd spent my whole life fixing broken machines. I knew when something was beyond repair and when it just needed the right tool applied with the right pressure. Finally, I understood. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a takeover. It's funny what pushes you from anger into resolve. For me, it wasn't the legal petition. It wasn't the dog food or the keyed paint. It was a garage door opener. 3 nights after the lawyer's visit, around midnight, I heard a sound that still makes my blood run cold when I think about it. The whine of the automatic garage door. I woke instantly. Max's head snapped up from his dog bed, ears pricked. The red digits of the alarm clock glowed 12:07. My phone sat on the nightstand. I grabbed it, slid my feet into my slippers, and stood slowly, my knees protesting. The whine continued, then stopped with a clunk as the door reached the top of its track. I moved down the hallway, every creak of the floorboards sounding like a gunshot. I didn't bother turning on the lights. I knew the layout of my own house better than I knew my own face. From the kitchen, I could see the faint glow seeping under the door to the garage. Someone was in there. Max growled low in his throat. I put a hand on his collar. I should have called the police. A sensible man would have. Instead, I did what a mechanic does. I went to see what the problem was. I eased the kitchen door open a fraction of an inch. In the sodium light from the driveway, I saw a familiar silhouette moving between the cars. Tall, broad shoulders, expensive jacket, Mark. He stood by the Challenger, phone flashlight in one hand, the other hand running along the trim with a casual familiarity that made bile rise in my throat. He had my spare garage remote in his hand, the one that had gone missing from the hook by the door a month ago, which I'd convinced myself I'd simply misplaced. He walked past the Mustang, past the Chevy, to the workbench in the corner, pulled drawers half open, rifled through them, shaking his head, looking for the title documents. I don't remember making the decision. I just remember the sound of my own voice, rough and unfamiliar. "What are you doing in my garage, Mark?" He jumped, the flashlight beam jerking wildly. It caught my face, blinding me for a second, then dropped to the floor. "Dad?" he snapped, quickly regaining his composure. "What are you doing up?" "This is my house," I said. "What are you doing here in the middle of the night?" He straightened, putting on that same concerned expression he'd worn at the dog food birthday. "I was just checking on you," he said. "You didn't answer my texts. I got worried." "Worried that I was sleeping?" I asked. "And the garage," he added quickly. "Your neighbor told me he heard noises last week. I thought maybe someone was trying to steal the cars. I wanted to make sure everything was secure." "In the middle of the night, without calling first." He shrugged. "You get paranoid when you're older. I was helping." "By rummaging through my drawers?" He hesitated, then spread his hands, as if this were all some big misunderstanding. "Look, Dad," he said, "you're being stubborn. You know the hearing is coming. The judge will ask for proof that you can manage things. I was looking for your insurance papers, titles, whatever, to make sure everything is presentable. You didn't tell me about the petition. You had some stranger show up on my porch," I said. "You keyed my cars. You fed me dog food and called it a preview. Now you sneak into my house in the dead of night. That's not concern, Mark. That's hostility." His face hardened. "Fine," he said. "You want it straight? Here it is." He stepped closer. The smell of expensive cologne and beer hit me. You're sitting on $250,000 in cars, another $400 in this property, and God knows what in savings. Mom died and left everything to you. Meanwhile, I'm working 60 hours a week, trying to keep my kids in a decent school, watching you waste your life alone in a museum. I earned this, I said. With my childhood, he shot back. With Mom's sacrifices. With all the opportunities I gave up to stay close, to help you after she died. I almost laughed. Help me? I asked. Is that what you call coming over once a month to complain about your job and ask for a check? You don't get it, he said through clenched teeth. You're not going to live forever. Someone has to plan for what happens after. And your plan, I said, is to prove I'm incompetent so you can sell my house, sell my cars, put me in a nursing home and live off the proceeds. He didn't deny it. Sunset Ridge is a good facility, he said instead. Better than you deserve, considering how ungrateful you're being. Ungrateful? I repeated. I'm offering you safety, comfort, company. You think you'll be happier when you fall in the garage and bleed out next to your precious Mustang? Because that's where this is going. The dog growled again, a low rumble. Mark glanced at him, then back at me. You're being dramatic, he said. Just sign the papers, Dad. We can do this the easy way. I'll manage your finances, rent out the house, sell the cars. You'll have a private room and round-the-clock care. You might even like it. No, I said. He exhaled, shaking his head like I'd just failed some test. Then you're forcing me to push this through without your cooperation, he said, tapping his phone. Judges don't like it when old men endanger themselves and their neighbors. They like rational children who step in to help. I changed your diapers, I said softly. I taught you to drive in that driveway. I worked double shifts so you could go to college. And I'm very grateful, he said mechanically. But gratitude doesn't pay tuition anymore. It doesn't pay my mortgage. It doesn't pay my kids' braces. There it was, the truth, naked and ugly. You're not taking my house, I said, or my garage, or my mind. His jaw tightened. You don't get to decide that anymore, he said. The courts will. He walked past me toward the door, brushing my shoulder as he went. Remember the dog food, he murmured. It'll be cheaper than steak where you're going. He left the garage door open behind him. The night air spilled in, cold and sharp. I stood there, surrounded by the only things that had never betrayed me, and understood something with crystal clarity. The man who'd just spoken to me wasn't my son anymore. He was my adversary, and I was done playing defense. I made my first call the next morning at 8:01 a.m. Howard Jenkins speaking. His voice was exactly as I remembered it, gravelly, amused, like he'd just heard a joke only he understood. Howard, it's Len Harris. There was a pause, then a low whistle. Len? As I live and breathe, I thought you'd finally retired to Florida or dropped dead under a carburetor. Still in Ohio, I said. Still under carburetors. Good man, he chuckled. What can I do for you? Last I heard you were doing tune-ups on those antiques of yours and terrorizing the local parts store. Do you still sit on the board at Midwestern Mutual? I asked. He shifted gears instantly. Howard had owned the biggest dealership in the county for decades before selling it and becoming, among other things, very influential in the insurance world. Still chairman, he said. Why? Does a Mark Harris work there? I asked. Another pause. Papers rustled. Senior account manager, Howard said eventually. Hired 5 years ago. Your boy? My son, I said. The word tasted wrong. Did you hire him as a favor to me? Howard laughed. Len, I don't hire anyone as a favor. I interviewed him myself. Sharp numbers guy, talks a good game. You gave him a glowing reference. Said he had your work ethic. That was before I knew him, I said quietly. Howard didn't say anything for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice had dropped. "What's going on, Len?" I told him. "Not everything, but enough. The dog food, the scratches, the midnight visit, the attempt at guardianship." I kept my voice steady, clinical, like I was describing a faulty timing belt. "And now," I finished, "he's using his supposed concern for me to try to take my house and garage and park me in a facility so he can afford a second vacation home." Howard exhaled slowly. "Damn," he said. I knew he was ambitious, but that's another level. "I'm not asking you to fix my family," I said. "No one can. But I thought you should know that the guy managing your client's risk has no problem sabotaging his own father to improve his balance sheet." There was a long silence. "Let me look into his file," Howard said finally. "You didn't hear this from me, and I didn't hear any of that from you. Understand?" "I understand," I said. "And Howard?" "Yeah?" "No matter what happens with him, thank you for listening. You once rebuilt my entire transmission in a weekend when I was too cheap to buy a new truck," he said. "The least I can do is listen when you call in a favor." We hung up. The second call I made was to a different kind of mechanic, a man who fixed broken legal situations instead of engines. His name was Daniel Price, and I'd met him because his father had been one of my old customers. Price and Keller, attorneys at law, occupied a narrow office suite above a laundromat. No mahogany, no fancy art, just file cabinets, black coffee, and a receptionist who called everyone Hearn. I brought the conservatorship petition, the stack of insurance policies, and a folder full of documents I'd hoped I'd never need: the original deed to my house, the garage addition permits, and my late wife's will. Daniel was in his late 30s, with kind eyes and a habit of tapping his pen against his lip when he thought. "You've got quite a classic collection," he said, scanning the papers. "I'd love to see that Challenger sometime." "You can," I said, "if it's still in my possession by the end of this." He read through the petition slowly, frowning. "This is aggressive," he said. "Most adult children at least wait until their parent shows clear signs of decline before trying to declare them incapacitated." "So I'm told," I replied dryly. He slid the file aside and laced his fingers together. "First things first," he said. "Are you willing to undergo a medical evaluation to prove your competence?" "Yes," I said. "Tomorrow, if you like." "Good," he nodded. "We'll arrange that. I'll also file a response contesting this petition, but I want to talk to you about something else." He pulled the house deed toward him and tapped a section with his pen. "You still hold title outright," he said. "For now," I answered. "But he's trying to change that, isn't he?" "Not yet," Price said. "There's no transfer filed, no quitclaim deed, just this petition to give him control." "You said, 'for now,'" I repeated. "What would stop me from, say, selling the house before he can take it?" Price looked up, eyes sharp. "Are you thinking of moving?" he asked. "I'm thinking of not living under the same roof as someone who wants to lock me up," I said. "I built that garage with my own hands, but 4 walls and a roof are just materials. What matters is that they're mine." "We could sell," Price said slowly, "or transfer to an irrevocable trust, but either option has consequences. Taxes, logistics." "I don't care if I end up in a trailer on a gravel lot," I said. "I care that my son doesn't profit from treating me like a burden." He studied me for a long moment, tapping his pen. "You realize," he said, "if we move everything into a trust, and you put someone else in charge, Mark will be frozen out completely. No automatic inheritance, no control." "I realize," I said. "Who says he has to be my heir?" "You have other family?" he asked. I thought of my younger sister in Indiana, my late brother's kids in Texas, the neighbor boy who'd been bringing my trash cans in for the last year just because he liked talking about engines. "I have options," I said. Price leaned back. "All right," he said. "Here's what we'll do. We'll file a response to the conservatorship petition, and request an independent medical evaluation. We'll also, quietly and as quickly as possible, retitle your assets into a living trust where you are the trustee for as long as you're declared competent. After that, your successor trustee takes over." "Not Mark," I said. "Not Mark," he agreed. "And the house?" "The trust will own it, which means even if a conservatorship is granted later, your son can't unilaterally sell it. He can petition, but the trustee would have to agree, and we will name someone you trust as successor." His pen stopped tapping. "You said Price and Keller hold client confidentiality," he added. "Your son won't know about the trust until he tries to grab something that's no longer there." I exhaled slowly. For the first time in weeks, the knot in my chest loosened. "Let's do it," I said. "And the garage?" he asked. I smiled for the first time that day. "Oh, I have a plan for the garage," I said. "He won't see that one coming." I didn't tell Mark anything. For the next 3 weeks, I played the role of confused, stubborn old man while Daniel Price and his paralegal worked faster than any pit crew I'd ever seen. We established the Harris Living Trust. We moved the deed. We rolled the titles of the cars into it as assets. We rewrote my will completely. My new successor trustee wasn't Mark. It was someone who understood both engines and loyalty. My neighbor's son, Ethan Moore, a quiet 26-year-old who'd spent more Saturdays in my garage than Mark had in the last decade. When I'd asked, Ethan had stared at me like I'd offered him the moon. "Me?" he stammered. "Mr. Harris, I'm just a mechanic at the shop down the road." "So was I said. "I trust how you think. You listen, you pay attention. That's more than I can say for my own flesh and blood." He swallowed hard. "I'd be honored." "Being honored is nice," I said. "Being responsible is harder. If I lose my marbles someday for real, it'll be your job to make sure I'm treated with dignity, not profit." "I'll do it," he said firmly. In between appointments and signatures, I kept working in the garage. Sanding, polishing, adjusting. If Mark noticed nothing was for sale, he didn't mention it. What he did mention, loudly and often, was Sunset Ridge. "Dad, you're being unreasonable," he said one Sunday afternoon as we stood in my kitchen. Stacy hovered near the fridge, pretending to read the magnet calendar. "I visited Sunset Ridge yesterday," he continued. "They have a woodworking shop, a resident band, bingo nights. You'd love it." "I love my garage," I said. "Your garage is a hazard," he snapped. "You think a judge is going to be impressed that a 70-year-old is crawling under cars all day? He'll use it as proof you're not capable of making safe choices." "Judges drive cars too," I replied. He slammed his palm on the counter, making Stacy jump. "You know what?" he said. "I tried. I really did. But you're forcing my hand. The hearing's in 2 weeks. We'll let the court decide." I shrugged, deliberately casual. "Whatever you say." His eyes narrowed. "Why aren't you more worried?" he asked. I took a bite of my sandwich, because I'm not the one who should be. That night, after they left, I sat in the garage with Max and looked at my 3 beauties lined up in a row. They gleamed under the fluorescent lights, every curve perfect. "You boys are going on a little trip," I told them. The next morning a flatbed arrived. Ethan climbed out from the driver's side of a battered Ford dually, wiping his hands on his jeans. "You sure about this?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "You have the paperwork?" He held up a folder. "Bill of sale, trust documentation, your signature, my signature. All legal. Daniel double-checked everything." I nodded. We loaded the Mustang first, then the Chevy, then the Challenger, each one secured carefully with straps in padded corners. As the purple Challenger rose off the garage floor, I felt something tear in my chest. Not regret, Not really, more like the tearing of an old bandage. Max whined softly, watching. It's all right, boy, I murmured. They're not leaving you. They're leaving him. Ethan climbed back down. You know, he said, most guys in your position would just leave everything to their kids and hope for the best. Hope is a terrible strategy, I said. I've seen too many engines blow up because someone hoped the oil would hold out for one more month. Where should I park them? He asked. I smiled. Your uncle still owned that storage warehouse over by the river? I asked. The one with the security cameras and the reinforced doors? Ethan grinned. Already rented you a unit, he said, under the trust's name. We shook hands. As the flatbed pulled away, Mark's white BMW turned the corner into my street. I watched his face as he saw the truck, the cars, the movement. He slammed on his brakes so hard his tires squealed. What the hell is going on? He shouted, jumping out of his car. Morning, I called. Beautiful day. He ignored that. Why are your cars on a truck? He demanded. Oh, those? I asked. I sold them. His face blanched. You what? Sold them, I repeated. Cash offer. Needed to simplify. Doctor's orders. You can't do that without talking to me, he stammered. I raised an eyebrow. Since when do I need my son's permission to sell my own property? He looked at the disappearing flatbed, then back at me, fury building like a storm. Those cars are part of your estate, he said. Part of my future. You don't get to just give them away to some stranger. He's not a stranger, I said. He's someone who actually cares about engines and people in that order. That's insane, Mark hissed. Do you have any idea what you've done to your asset portfolio? I've done exactly what I chose to do, I cut in, while I'm still legally allowed to choose. He stared at me, chest heaving. You're going to regret this, he said. Maybe, I answered. But I'd regret it more if I let you sell them for scrap price to cover your credit card bills. His phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, swore under his breath, and stalked back to his BMW. This isn't over, he said through the open window. The hearing is still happening, and I'm still your son. You're right about one of those, I said. He drove off so fast he almost clipped the mailbox. Later that afternoon, Howard called. Len, he said, you didn't hear this from me, but you might want to tell your son to take a sick day tomorrow. Why's that? I asked. Because our internal audit team just finished a review, he said, and your boy's expense account looks creative. Creative? I repeated. Lunches that never happened, hotel stays that don't match any company trips, entertainment charges with no clients listed. Normally, we'd just reprimand, maybe dock pay, but given what you told me and what we found, we're terminating. For cause. I closed my eyes, leaned back in my chair. So he's fired, I said. Tomorrow, Howard confirmed. He'll get a severance check, but not enough to buy any more BMWs. Make sure he gets whatever the law requires, I said. I don't want this to look like I sicked anyone on him. You didn't, Howard said. He did this to himself. We're just noticing. After we hung up, I went out to the garage. It was emptier than I'd seen it in decades. Just Max's bed, my workbench, and a single folding chair. I sat down and listened to the echo of my own breathing in the hollow space. The war had shifted. He just didn't know it yet. 2 days before the hearing, Mark showed up unannounced. He didn't bother knocking. He pushed the front door open like he still owned the place, even though he never had. "Why is your house listed online?" he demanded, storming into the living room. I looked up from the newspaper. "Good afternoon to you too," I said. "Don't play games," he snapped, shoving his phone in my face. On the screen was a real estate listing. My house, my address, photos of the kitchen, the living room, the now empty garage. "Charming ranch home," he read aloud, his voice dripping with outrage. Newly updated, oversized garage, great neighborhood, motivated seller. What the hell are you doing, Dad? Exactly what it says, I replied. Selling. You can't, he said. I can, I said. In fact, I already have an offer. Full asking price. Closing in 30 days. His face turned a shade of red I'd never seen. You're insane, he hissed. Where will you live? I've found a smaller place, I said. 1-bedroom condo near the river. Elevator, good views, no lawn to mow, perfect for someone my age. You didn't discuss this with me, he repeated as if that were the cardinal sin. I didn't have to, I said calmly. You see, Mark, while you were busy trying to convince a judge I'm incompetent, I was busy proving I'm not. He clenched his fists. You're running from the hearing, he said. You think if you get rid of everything, I'll give up? I'm not running, I said. I'm rearranging. There's a difference. His phone buzzed in his hand. He glanced at it, grimaced. Is that Midwestern Mutual? I asked. Or whatever they're called. He stiffened. How do you know where I work? He muttered. I know more than you think, I said. He looked down at his phone, then back at me. They fired me, he blurted. Are you happy now? No, I said. I'm not. His shoulders sagged, anger momentarily replaced by something like panic. They said I misused company funds, he said. That my expense reports were inconsistent. They said there were too many discrepancies for it to be a mistake. Were there? I asked. He swallowed. Everyone does it, he muttered. You take a client out, you forget to write down the name, you charge an extra dinner here and there. It's normal. They singled me out. Someone must have said something. I didn't tell them to fire you, I said, but I did tell them to look closely. The rest was you. He sank onto the couch, running his hands over his face. For a moment, he looked like the boy who'd skinned his knee falling off his bike and tried not to cry. What am I supposed to do now? He whispered. Stacy's already mad about the credit cards. The kid's tuition is due. The mortgage. I watched him for a long moment. You could apologize, I said. He looked up, eyes flashing again. For what? He demanded. For worrying about my father? For trying to protect him from himself? For treating me like an ATM, I said quietly. For scratching my cars. For sifting through my drawers in the middle of the night. For feeding me dog food on my birthday. He looked away. That was a joke, he muttered. It wasn't, I said. Not for me. He stood again, restless. All right, he said. Fine. You've made your point. You sold the cars. You're selling the house. You got me fired. Congratulations. You win. Happy? This isn't a game, I said. There's no win here. He laughed bitterly. Could have fooled me, he said. You played me like a mark, Dad. I thought you were fading. Turns out you've been 3 steps ahead. No, I said. I was the one behind. For years. I thought if I kept helping you, you'd eventually see it, appreciate it. Instead, you saw me as soft, weak, easy to manipulate. His jaw clenched. So what now, he asked. You're cutting me out of your life, of your will, leaving everything to that grease monkey down the street? That grease monkey has shown me more respect than you have in a decade, I said. But no, I'm not cutting you out completely. I'm just adjusting your expectations. His eyes narrowed. What does that mean? It means that when I die, I said, you will not inherit a house, or a garage, or a collection of cars. You will not have assets to liquidate to pay off your debts. You'll have memories, and whatever relationship we manage to salvage. He snorted. So nothing, he said. That depends on you, I replied. He shook his head, laughing humorlessly. You think you're teaching me a lesson, he said. You think I'll fall to my knees begging for forgiveness. But you can't escape reality, Dad. You're still old. You're still alone, and you're still going to end up in some kind of facility. The only difference now is that you'll be there because you were too proud to accept help." "Maybe," I said. "But if I end up there, it'll be because that's what I chose. Not because my son forced me while measuring my door frames for listing photos." He stared at me like he'd never seen me before. "I don't know you," he said finally. "You haven't tried to?" I answered. He left without another word. The next day, Daniel called to tell me the conservatorship petition had been withdrawn. "Seems your son's legal counsel advised him that without assets to manage and without medical evidence of incapacity, there was little point in proceeding," he said dryly. "So that's it," I said. "For now," Daniel replied. "If he tries again, we'll be ready." That night, I slept 8 hours straight for the first time in months. I moved into the condo 2 weeks later. It was smaller, yes. No garage. Just a reserved spot in the covered parking lot and a storage unit in the basement. The building was full of widows, retirees, and a few young nurses who worked the night shift at the hospital down the street. The first thing I did was hang a framed photo in the living room. A picture of me and Carol standing in front of the house I'd just sold. The 3 cars gleaming behind us like a second family. Max adjusted quickly. As long as his bed was in a sunny corner and his bowl was in the kitchen, he was content. I built a small workbench in the storage unit downstairs and labeled my toolboxes carefully. No engines to rebuild there, but I fixed neighbors' lamps, walkers, wheelchairs, whatever they brought me. Life became quiet again. For a while. Then, about 6 months after the move, just as the leaves started turning and the air took on that sharp October smell, Mark showed up at my new door. He looked smaller. His suit was cheaper. His tie was loosened. There were dark circles under his eyes, and his shoulders didn't sit quite as straight. He'd always carried himself like a man walking into a room he owned. Now he looked like he wasn't sure he belonged in the hallway. "Dad," he said. "Mark," I answered. We stood there a long moment, the distance between us filled with unspoken things. "Can I come in?" he asked finally. I studied his face. No arrogance, just exhaustion. "Sure," I said. "Max still remembers you." Inside, he looked around the modest living room, the small kitchen, the balcony with a view of the river in the distance. "So this is it," he said. "Your big escape." "This is peace," I said. He sat at the small table, hands clasped. I poured coffee for both of us, the smell filling the room. "How are the kids?" I asked, because I still cared. He winced. "They're fine. Stacy's, well, Stacy." "And you?" I prompted. His mouth twisted. "I've been better," he admitted. "The job market isn't great for someone who's been fired for ethics violations. We've been scraping by, sold the BMW, took out a second mortgage, cut back on everything." "Sounds hard," I said. "It is," he murmured. Silence settled between us, thick and heavy. "I didn't come here to ask for money," he said suddenly. I raised an eyebrow. "No?" "No," he said sharply. "I know I have no right to. Not after everything." "Why did you come then?" I asked. He swallowed, stared at his hands. "For help," he said. "Of a different kind." "Help with what?" He sighed, a long shuddering breath. "I got a notice yesterday," he said. "From the bank. We're 3 months behind on the mortgage. If I don't pay something soon, they'll start foreclosure proceedings." "That's serious," I said. He laughed bitterly. "Understatement of the year," he said. "We're already behind on the utilities. The kids' school is threatening to drop them if we don't catch up on tuition." "And Stacy?" I asked. "She thinks I'm handling it," he said. "She still spends like nothing's changed. Instagram lives don't pay the bills." He looked up at me, eyes shining. I know I don't deserve it, he said, but I was hoping, maybe, you could help us out. Just this once. A loan. Something to get us back on our feet. I'll pay you back, I swear. I remembered him on my 70th birthday, pressing a spoon of dog food to my lips, telling me I'd be eating it for the rest of my life. I remembered the scratches on my cars, the midnight intrusion, the legal petition. I also remembered the way he'd clung to my leg when he was 5 and scared of thunderstorms. The way he'd cried when he missed the winning shot in his high school game and thought he'd let the whole team down. He was still my son, but he was also a man who had to live with the consequences of his choices. I can't bail you out, I said quietly. His face crumpled. You won't, he corrected. I can't, I repeated. Not the way you want. If I start paying your mortgage, your tuition, your credit cards, what changes? Nothing. You go back to seeing me as a resource instead of a person. So what then? He snapped. You just watch me lose everything? You sit here in your little condo while your grandchildren get evicted? The old anger flared in him, sharp and ugly. What did you think would happen, Dad? He continued. That I'd magically learn my lesson when you cut me off? That I'd thank you for ruining my life? I thought, I said slowly, that maybe once you lost what you thought you were entitled to, you'd understand what it means to stand on your own feet. He laughed, a broken sound. Well, lesson learned, he said. We're broke. Is that what you wanted? No, I said. What I wanted was a son who respected me enough not to feed me dog food in my own house. He flinched. I was angry, he said. You were stubborn. I said things I shouldn't. You did things you shouldn't, I corrected. You tried to take my life away while I was still living it. He wiped his face with both hands. I know, he whispered. And I'm sorry. I am. But I'm also desperate. The kids didn't do anything wrong. They don't deserve to lose their home. No, I agreed. They don't. I stood, walked to the small pantry, and opened the door. On the second shelf, next to the canned soup and beans, sat a single familiar object. A bright blue can. I'd bought it a week after I moved in. Not for Max, just to remind myself. I took it down and placed it on the table in front of him. He stared at it, confused at first, then horrified when he recognized the label. Dog food? He whispered. I shook my head. Cat food, I said. Chicken flavor. I figured it was closer to your palate these days. He looked from the can to my face, outrage igniting. What is this? He demanded. Some kind of sick joke? Perspective, I said. 6 months ago, you told me I'd be eating dog food for the rest of my life because you were going to take everything from me. You tried. You failed. Now you're in the position you wanted for me. His jaw clenched, eyes blazing. So you're throwing that in my face, he said. Real mature. I'm reminding you, I said, that the way you treat people when you think you'll never need them has a way of circling back. He pushed the can away like it burned him. I didn't come here to be humiliated, he said, voice shaking. And I didn't raise you to be a man who feeds his father dog food, I replied. But we both did things we regret. Silence fell again, heavy and tense. Finally, I picked up the can, turned it in my hands, and set it back down gently. I am not going to write you a check, I said. But I will offer you something. What? He asked bitterly. A can of cat food and a lecture? A chance, I said. A job, a place to stay. A way forward that doesn't involve you treating me like an asset. He frowned. What are you talking about? The building manager here is looking for a maintenance assistant, I said. Someone to fix leaky faucets, repaint hallways, change light bulbs. It doesn't pay what your old job did, but it's honest work. I gave him your name. He's willing to interview you. He scoffed. I'm an experienced account manager, he said. You want me to become a handyman? I want you to become a man who knows what it means to fix something instead of exploit it, I said simply. He stared at me, stunned. And the kids? He asked finally. The house? I can help with groceries, I said. With a month's rent if you have to move. With tutoring for the kids if they switch schools. Modest things. Real things. Not luxury Band-Aids. He sat very still. You'd really let us lose the house? He whispered. Yes, I said. If the house is the only thing holding your pride together, then maybe it needs to go. Maybe you need to see that a home is not walls and mortgages. It's people. He looked down at his hands. They were shaking. I don't know if Stacy will go for that, he said. She likes our life. Then she can decide what matters more, I said. Square footage or family? He swallowed hard. And the can? He asked, eyes flicking to it. I slid it toward him again. Take it, I said. Why? He asked hoarsely. Because one day, I said, when you're about to make a choice that treats someone like a burden instead of a human being, I want you to look at that can and remember the taste you wanted for me. He stared at it like it might explode. I'm not going to eat it, he said. That's your choice, I said, just like everything else. We sat there in silence. Finally, he picked up the can and slipped it into his jacket pocket. I'll talk to the building manager, he said quietly. Good, I said. He stood, hesitated. Dad, he said. Yes. I really am sorry, he whispered. I know, I said. Now show me. He nodded once and left. As the door clicked shut behind him, Max walked over and rested his head on my knee. I scratched his ears and looked at the empty spot on the table where the can had been. My son had come to feed me humiliation and take my life away. In the end, he left with a lesson in his pocket and the first honest chance he'd had in years. Whether he'd use it or not, that was the one part of this story I couldn't control. But I'd taken back my house, my garage, my dignity, and my future. I wasn't the one eating pet food, and if he ever forgot that, well, he had a metal reminder clinking softly in his coat, waiting to be opened.
My grandpa's words really happened. I believe him. If you want more true tales stories like this, hit subscribe.